you have the visions, you have the ideals, you have the life that you plan to live, and maybe you pursue those dreams, and maybe you sort of get caught up in the day-to-day.
Welcome to the Stories Cafe podcast, the espresso version of Stories Cafe, offering quick, enriching moments of reflection on literature, cinema, archetypes, philosophy, and the art of living deliberately. Just like a perfectly crafted espresso at a Parisian cafe, each episode is a brief pause for you to submerge yourself in something invigorating and fulfilling. I'm Annette, course creator, internationally published author, and wanderer at heart. So cozy up as we explore the powerful world of stories, how they shape our lives, and teach us the art of living deliberately.
What we're talking about today is Peter Weir's Dead Poets Society from 1989. We're not analyzing the film as such. What we're talking about today is sort of the essence of what the cafe is about, the art of living deliberately. So it's about this all-boys school, and a new teacher starts at the school, John Keating, and the school is very old-fashioned and strict and bourgeois school of sort of upper class boys. So John Keating, the teacher played by Robin Williams, starts, and his method of teaching is drastically different from anything those boys have ever seen. The first thing he teaches them is they're reading from a book about poetry, understanding poetry, and he tells them to rip out the pages of the book. And then he starts explaining to them what poetry really is. And the boys are kind of at first a little bit horrified. Are we supposed to rip the pages out of our books? But then they actually think it's funny, because it's probably what a lot of, I suppose, kids think when they're forced to read those kinds of dry books. So the journey that they go on together is one of drastic development for some of the boys, but some of them can't handle the lessons that he teaches, and one of the boys ends up committing suicide. And then Keating is expelled from the school. So we're going to very specifically go through what is it that Keating really teaches them. So what I call lesson one, the first meeting the boys have with Keating, and we can see how strict and old-fashioned and kind of dusty that school is, and the values of the school are very traditional. So the first lesson, the first time they meet Keating, he comes into the classroom, the boys are all seated, and he comes in whistling the overture from Tchaikovsky's 1812. And then he leaves the classroom again, and he stands in the hallway and he says, come on. And the boys are like, what? So they get up from their seats and go out into the hallway. And the very first thing Keating says to them is, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." Throughout this entire film, every single work that is chosen, whether it's the 1812 overture, whether it's the poem, "Oh Captain, My Captain," later we have Beethoven music, and we have a lot of literary works, that all those works are, of course, chosen very specifically to mean something. Why is the first lines he says, "Oh Captain, my Captain"? And then he says, "My name is John Keating, but those of you who are a little more daring may call me, oh Captain, my Captain." And you probably remember, those of you who were with me when we talked about the Walt Whitman poem, that it's a poem about Abraham Lincoln. So in a way, Keating identifies himself as something similar to Abraham Lincoln. Then he tells them to look at the glass displays of photographs of all the old students who went to that school. And he tells the boys to look at those photographs, because most of those people are dead now. And he says, when they were here, they were the same age as you were, and they probably had all kinds of visions for their lives. He then says, you can probably hear them if you listen very carefully, that they're telling you, Carpe Diem. Does anybody know what that means? One of the boys knew what "Oh Captain, my Captain" referred to, but one of the boys knows what Carpe Diem means. It means seize the day in Latin. And the point of that is, as he says, all of us at one point will be food for worms. And all those people in those photographs are now fertilizing daffodils. So the first thing that he starts talking to them about is seize the day. Why? Because eventually we will all be food for worms. So the first thing he starts talking to them about, which is also, by the way, what Oh Captain, My Captain is about, is death. This is part of my mission in life, I think, to keep reminding you, because we all do that. We get caught up in the day to day. We get caught up in all the notifications and all the bad news, and we're constantly expected to be able to deal with everything that's happening in the entire world. So you could then say, what is John Keating's basic life philosophy? Because we are all going to die, we have to make sure to live as intensely and fully as possible. That is really the first lesson that he teaches those boys. You will be fertilizing daffodils like all those other guys. What are your visions? What are your dreams? How can you seize the day? And the poem that he uses to illustrate that concept, the Carpe Diem, was a very popular concept in the 1640s, 1650s, that period of poetry. And there are several poems from that period written about something similar. This one, the one that is mentioned in the film, is called To the Virgins to Make Much of Time by Robert Herrick, and it's from 1648. And it starts with the lines which are quoted in the film. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a flying, and the same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. So he says to the boys, why does the poet says, gather your rosebuds while ye may? And one of the boys says, because he's in a hurry? No, because we're all going to be food for worms. The point of these poems, which he does not mention, the Carpe Diem, I mean, it sounds really wonderful, of course, seize the day. But what the Carpe Diem poems were really about, to the virgins to make much of time, it was using poetry to force women to have sex with you. That was really what these poems were about. It was about, reminding young women, we're all going to die, and so you better go to bed with me right now. And that's why the title of the poem is To the Virgins. I mean, it really is about, more than anything, seducing women. So it really is about, yeah, I want to sleep with you now. And if you wait, you may not be interesting or attractive anymore. So that's really what they're about. But that's, of course, not Keating's point. Keating's point with Seize the Day is make sure that you live life to the fullest while you can. The point of lesson number one is make your lives extraordinary. This is what he tells the boys. That's what it's about. This is not said in the film, but that's my interpretation. Because we're all going to die, you have to live as fully and deliberately as possible. One of the thoughts that we might have, I suppose, from the beginning is, are these boys mature enough to really handle how revolutionary Keating's thoughts are in terms of the school, in terms of their authorities of the school, in terms of their parents and their families? And of course, some of the drama in the film later on is not just about, they come from this old-fashioned school and now they're taught things about their own individuality and everybody lives happily ever after. It really is about, if you're saying something that is deeper than what people are used to hearing, it can sometimes be difficult to get your point across. And then if you do get your point across, some people will not like that so much. Does that make sense? You just have to keep saying it over and over again and trust that someone will listen and someone will get it. And the point, of course, of this film is that you have a whole group of boys and they all perceive his words differently. And some of them like it, and a lot of them like it, and some of them don't. And some of them really hate it. But then they sort of integrate it into their lives in different ways. But it can, as we see in the film, bring about some very dramatic changes. So that's the first lesson. Make your lives extraordinary. Don't stay stuck in the taking things for granted.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed your espresso break and learned something new. If you're eager to dive deeper into the world of stories and ideas, be sure to hit the follow button in Spotify or the plus button in Apple Podcasts so that you get each new episode straight to your podcast app. You can also visit us at Stories Cafe. Just go to stories-cafe.com. There you can explore free content for a taste of what we offer, or if you're ready for more, a paid membership unlocks in-depth discussions, full access to our archives, and a vibrant community of fellow story enthusiasts. I am so thrilled to have you here, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Stories Cafe soon.